The train screeched to a halt in a cloud of steam and cinders, its whistle echoing across the wide Texas plain. Olivia Sinclair stepped down from the iron steps with the poise of a woman accustomed to marble foyers and crystal chandeliers, not dust and grit. Her gown, though tailored for travel, bore the mark of wealth, fine wool and deep navy trimmed with ivory lace. A delicate hat shaded her features, though no accessory could shield her from the curious stares that met her as she set foot in Abilene. Olivia was a black heiress, daughter of the late Charles Sinclair, a steel magnate whose unexpected death had left her with not only a fortune, but also acres of landholdings in the West, land she had never seen, land she now meant to inspect herself. The townsfolk, unaccustomed to women of her refinement, much less women of her complexion, watched in silence. Whispers trailed behind her like the steam from the locomotive. Waiting at the end of the platform was a tall man in a weathered Stetson, his boots coated in trail dust, his shirt rolled at the sleeves. His stance was easy, but his gaze sharp, the kind of man who measured people not by pedigree, but by grit. When Olivia approached, he tipped his hat, though the gesture carried as much challenge as courtesy. "Miss Sinclair," he drawled, voice deep as the prairie itself. "Name's Jack Callahan. Your father hired me to manage the ranch lands. Didn't expect his daughter would come to see him herself." Olivia lifted her chin, refusing to flinch at the hint of skepticism in his tone. "I intend to understand what belongs to me, Mr. Callahan. If my father thought it worth his time, it is worth mine as well." Jack's eyes flicked over her traveling gown, the fine gloves at her hands. A muscle twitched in his jaw, half amusement, half disbelief. "Worth yours, maybe. But this country don't take kindly to lace and satin. Out here, it's mud, dust, and sweat that keep land alive. Hope you're ready for that." The clash was immediate, like flint striking steel. Olivia met his gaze evenly. "Do not mistake appearances for weakness, Mr. Callahan. I have weathered boardrooms full of men who thought me unfit to speak. I suspect your planes will not intimidate me more than they did." For the first time, his lips curved into the shadow of a grin. "We'll see, Miss Sinclair. We'll see." Behind them, the train let out one final hiss and pulled away, carrying with it the last trace of the east. Before Olivia stretched the endless horizon, golden grass bending in the wind, the sun heavy in the sky, and the faint outline of mountains on the far edge of the world. Whatever lay ahead, it would not be polite parlors and soft-spoken negotiations. It would be hard work, harder people, and a cowboy whose gaze already unsettled her more than she cared to admit. The Sinclair ranch stretched farther than Olivia could see, a sea of waving grass broken only by the distant specks of cattle and the occasional cottonwood tree clinging to the banks of a stream. Jack rode beside her wagon on horseback, posture easy, one hand resting on the reins. To Olivia, every mile felt like a test. Dust clung to her hem, the sun pressed heavy on her shoulders, and yet she refused to let him see her falter. At the ranch house, a sturdy structure of timber and stone, far from the polished elegance of New York, Jack helped her down. "This here's the center of it," he said, motioning to the barns, corrals, and windmill spinning lazily in the breeze. "If you're staying, you'd best be ready for work. Out here, it's not about titles or inheritances. It's about whether a person pulls their weight." Olivia met his challenge with calm precision. "Then show me where to begin, Mr. Callahan. I did not come all this way to sit idle while you doubt me." So he did. He put her to the test with chores that might have broken another society woman. He showed her the herd, explained the branding marks, and walked her through the accounts scratched into ledgers by hand. When a mare grew restless, Olivia steadied the creature with a voice as gentle as a hymn. Jack raised a brow. "Didn't think you had a way with horses." She lifted her chin. "You thought wrong." Day after day their rhythm grew. He taught her the land, how to read the sky for storms, how to judge when the cattle needed water. She surprised him with her sharp questions, her willingness to learn. At night, Olivia sat on the porch with a lantern, writing notes in her father's old ledger. Jack would pass by pretending not to watch, though his eyes lingered longer than they should. The clash between them softened, not vanishing but shifting into something else, tension laced with admiration, sparks hidden beneath dust and sweat. Jack caught himself studying the curve of her smile when she proved him wrong, the determination in her gaze when she faced the endless plains without fear. For her part, Olivia found herself drawn to the steadiness in his manner, the way he spoke plain truth when others wrapped lies in silk. Against her better judgment, she began to wonder if the West held more than just land and ledgers. Perhaps it held a man who saw her not as an heiress, but as a woman of strength. But the town had eyes. At the mercantile, she heard the whispers, that the Sinclair heiress was too fine for ranch life, that she'd return east soon enough. Some scoffed at the thought of her working alongside a cowboy. Others muttered about scandal, about boundaries best left unbroken. Olivia ignored them, but Jack heard every word, his jaw tight as he tipped his hat and moved on. That night, beneath a sky thick with stars, he found her by the corral. She leaned against the fence watching the horses settle. Their eyes met, silence stretching between them until Jack spoke. "You don't belong here," he said softly, though his tone carried more ache than disdain. "But damn me if I don't wish you did." By the second week, whispers in Abilene grew sharper. The Sinclair heiress was still on the ranch, riding out with the foreman, even taking meals in the yard rather than keeping to the big house. Some said she was too proud to last. Others, with knowing smirks, suggested she was already tangled in something unbecoming of her station. At the general store, Olivia felt the stares. One woman, arranging bolts of cloth, remarked just loud enough to carry, "Imagine a lady of her breeding keeping company with a cowboy. Charles Sinclair must be rolling in his grave." Olivia kept her head high, but her cheeks burned as she turned away. That evening, she found Jack repairing a fence post, his sleeves rolled, hands rough from labor. She stood watching until he looked up. "They're talking," she said simply. Her voice was steady, though a storm brewed beneath. "And you know what they're saying." Jack set his hammer aside. His gaze was level, unreadable. "Let 'em talk. Folks around here always need something to wag their tongues about." "It is different for me," Olivia pressed. "For you it's a passing nuisance. For me it is reputation, respectability. A woman like me walks a narrow edge, one slip, and all I have is gone." For a moment, silence stretched. Then Jack spoke, voice lower, edged with something he rarely let slip. "Reputation, Miss Sinclair, is a luxury I never had. Folks judge me before I open my mouth. Where I come from, you don't get to choose your place. You fight for it or you're trampled." Olivia tilted her head, curiosity pricking through her frustration. "And where do you come from, Mr. Callahan?" He hesitated, jaw tight. "Back east, they'd call me a runaway. Out here, I'm just a man who learned to survive. Your father gave me a chance when no one else would. But the town don't forget what a man's been, even if he tries to leave it behind." The revelation hung between them, heavy as the wide sky above. Olivia saw, perhaps for the first time, that Jack's defiance was not arrogance but armor. She stepped closer, her voice softening. "Then we are alike in a way, both seen as something we are not, both expected to fail." His eyes met hers, something unspoken sparking there. But before the moment could deepen, the sound of hoofbeats cut through the air. A rider from town, hat tipped low, slowed his horse near the fence. He glanced between them with a smirk. "Evenin', Callahan, Miss Sinclair, mighty fine night for conversation." Then he tipped his hat and rode on, leaving dust and suspicion in his wake. Olivia's heart pounded. Jack cursed under his breath, striking the fence post harder than before. "This ain't gonna stop, Olivia. They'll twist every word, every glance." She touched the fence rail, fingers brushing splinters. "Then let them. I came here to prove I could stand on this land, not cower because of whispers. If they cannot see the truth, that is their blindness, not mine." Jack looked at her then, truly looked, and for a heartbeat his guard dropped. The weight of the world pressed on them both, duty, gossip, pasts too heavy to ignore. Yet beneath it all was a pull neither could deny. The summer storm came sudden, rolling across the plains with thunder like cannon fire. By dusk, the sky cracked with lightning, and the herd grew restless. Jack was already in the saddle when Olivia rushed from the house, skirts clutched in her fists. "Stay inside," he barked over the wind. But Olivia shook her head. "If this ranch is mine, I won't hide from it. Tell me what to do." There was no time for argument. The cattle were spooked, eyes wild, hooves pounding as the first bolts of lightning split the sky. Jack swore under his breath, but motioned her toward the corral. "Close the gates. Tight. Keep 'em from breaking through." She did, fighting wind and rain, every muscle straining as the storm raged. Jack rode hard into the herd, cutting across their path, forcing them back with sharp whistles and the crack of his lariat. The ground shook with the stampede's fury, and for a breathless moment, Olivia thought they would be swallowed whole. Then, through the chaos, a steer broke loose, charging toward the corral where Olivia braced herself. Jack spurred his horse, racing across the mud. He swung his rope with perfect aim, lasso catching the beast's horns just as it bore down. Horse and rider slid in the muck, the steer bellowing, but Jack held fast, muscles straining. Olivia pressed against the gate, refusing to scream, refusing to flee. When the steer finally yielded, Jack's breath came ragged, soaked through with rain and sweat. "Are you mad?" he roared, turning to her, voice breaking with more fear than anger. "You could have been killed." She stood trembling, rain streaming down her face, but her chin was high. "And if I had stayed inside, Mr. Callahan, would your herd have been safer? Would your work have been easier? You don't get to decide where I belong." Their eyes locked, lightning splitting the sky behind them. The storm was still wild, but in that moment neither moved. Jack swung down from his horse, mud spattering his boots, and closed the distance between them in 3 long strides. His hand caught her arm, not rough but desperate. "Damn it, Olivia, don't you see? It's not the herd I'm worried about. It's you." Her breath caught, his grip loosened, fingers brushing down to her wrist. "You think I fear gossip," she whispered, voice shaking with more than the storm. "But what I fear most is this, what I feel when you look at me." Rain pounded around them, drowning out every whisper of the town, every expectation of society. Jack's forehead pressed to hers, his voice raw. "Then fear it with me, because I can't fight it anymore." For a heartbeat the world stilled. No thunder, no hooves, only the thrum of their hearts, and in the storm's fury, his lips found hers, fierce, unyielding, inevitable. It was not a kiss of courtship, not a stolen indulgence, but a vow sealed in rain and risk. When they finally broke apart, the storm had begun to pass. The herd settled, the night easing into silence, but nothing in Olivia's world would ever be the same. They had crossed the line, and whether it led to ruin or redemption, neither could go back. Morning broke with the scent of rain still clinging to the air. The storm had passed, leaving the plains glistening, the grass heavy with dew. Olivia stood on the porch of the ranch house, gazing out at the horizon where the rising sun set the land ablaze in gold. She felt changed, not by the storm alone, but by the man who had held her as the world roared around them. Jack approached quietly, his hat in his hands. Mud still clung to his boots, his shirt damp from the night's toil. For once, he did not wear that guarded look, the armor of a man who had spent a lifetime fending off judgment. Instead, he looked uncertain, vulnerable. "You shouldn't have been out there," he said softly, though the fire had left his voice. "But I've never been more grateful you were." Olivia turned, meeting his gaze. "Do you regret it, Jack? What passed between us in the storm?" His answer came without hesitation. "No, God help me. I'd face that storm 100 times over if it meant one more moment like that with you." She drew in a breath, the weight of the world pressing back in. "The town already talks. If they knew what truly happened, they'd call me ruined, a widow, an heiress, and now a fool who gave her heart to a cowboy." Jack stepped closer, his hand lifting as though to touch her cheek, though he let it fall short. Let them talk. Folks will always find a reason. But I've lived my life by their judgment long enough. What matters to me now is what you want." Her heart pounded. What she wanted. It seemed such a simple question, yet it carried the weight of two worlds. She thought of the East, glittering ballrooms, carefully arranged matches, a life gilded but hollow. Then she looked at the land stretching before her, wild and unyielding, and beside it, the man who had proven himself in storm and silence alike. "I want a life that is mine," she said at last, her voice steady, not when dictated by whispers or ledgers. "And if that life is here, it must be with you." His breath caught, and for a moment the mask of the stoic cowboy fell away completely. He reached for her then, drawing her into his arms, holding her as though he had carried that longing for years. Against his chest, Olivia closed her eyes, the steady thrum of his heart drowning out every echo of doubt. Later, as the sun sank behind the hills, they walked together to the corral. The cattle grazed peacefully, the ranch quiet after the storm. Jack leaned on the fence, his hat tipped low, while Olivia slipped her hand into his. Above them, the first stars pierced the velvet sky. "It won't be easy," he murmured. "There'll be fights and folks who'll never accept it." She squeezed his hand, her gaze fixed on the horizon. "Let them fight. Let them talk. They cannot take what is written in the stars." And so they stood together in the twilight, Heiress and Cowboy, bound not by duty or expectation, but by a love as untamed as the land itself. Whatever trials awaited, they had chosen each other, not in secret, not in fear, but in defiance and hope. And under the vast western sky, their story began anew. If this love story touched your heart, show some love back, like the video, and subscribe for more. Tell me in the comments, should their love story continue or end with mystery?